A wave of relief washed over me as I stepped into my quiet home. Silence was rare with my 3 roommates constantly buzzing about, but they had all gone home for the weekend, leaving me with the house to myself. The silence was nice, but what I wanted most was to see my boyfriend. My heart fluttered with excitement at the thought of seeing him, even if it would only be over Zoom. I set everything up in the living room, adjusting my webcam and fluffing the pillows on the couch. Just as I hit the connect button, the house lights flickered. I barely had time to register what was happening before the house completely lost power. My heart quickened in response to the sudden darkness as I fumbled for my phone. The light from my phone, usually too dim to illuminate much, was blinding in contrast to my now pitch-black home. Annoyed, I made my way to the breaker panel just out back, hoping it was just a tripped breaker. But when I flipped the switches, nothing happened. I began to feel sorry for myself, especially when I noticed the houses flanking mine in the distance were still illuminated, their windows glowing with life. The sight of scattered beams of light filtering through the tree line shifted my annoyance to unease. Why do they still have power? It was an unsettling question. More unsettling were how the hairs on the back of my neck began to raise. It was the kind of feeling you get when someone is watching you. Suddenly, I remembered I could call Jake. I tried calling, but there was no service. My heart sank as I shoved the useless roaming phone back into my pocket. And that's when I saw it. A faint silhouette of what looked like a man peeking around a thick oak tree some 40 yards away. Panic surged through me as the shadow remained still, locked in place. I froze, staring at the dark outline, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. But I knew I was kidding myself. I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness now that my phone's light was hidden away, and that's when my heart sank further. It wasn't a shadow, it was a man, and he was staring right at me. Just as I felt a surge of courage to unfreeze and run inside, my phone rang, the sound startling me into motion. I darted into the house, frantically reaching for my phone as I ran. My breath quickened when I finally answered. "Jake," I gasped. "There's someone outside. He was just staring at me." "Stay quiet and hide," Jake urged. "I'm calling the police. Just stay safe." I wanted to protest, beg him to stay on the line, but he was right. I needed help, and he was hundreds of miles away. I set my phone face down on the ground so it wouldn't draw attention. The silence felt immense, broken only by the pounding of my heart. I squeezed myself into the corner of my closet, the darkness wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Time seemed to stretch, each minute feeling like an eternity. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, shallow and rapid, as I strained to listen for any movement outside. 15 minutes later, I spotted red and blue lights flashing through the gaps in my closet door. Relief washed over me as the cops arrived, but it was short-lived. They searched the house and backyard, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, but found no one. Just as I began to feel a flicker of safety, that maybe it was all in my head, one of the officers turned to me, his face serious. "The power's been cut," he said, his voice low. "And we found boot prints, bigger than my size 11s leading to where you saw him," the officer said. My stomach twisted at the words. They had also discovered a rope hidden in the brush nearby, a chilling reminder of how close I had come to something far worse. The officers assured me that I was safe for now. Those 2 words, "for now," drove any semblance of relief far from me. The officers couldn't find the man, and I was left with the knowledge that he had been there, watching me. I felt lucky to be alive, but that's about it. After the police left, I sat in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on me. I hadn't seen him since, but I could still feel his eyes on me, lingering in the shadows of my mind. The quiet home that had once offered solace now felt like a prison, each creak of the floorboards and rustle of leaves outside amplifying my anxiety. And of course, those 4 words the officer left me with: "You're safe, for now." I'll never forget that night. It was 2 years ago during summer break between semesters at college. I got home after working a double shift waiting tables and went straight to my bedroom to shower and change. Finally, comfortable and clean, I snuggled up into my body pillow in bed and opened my tablet to finish the newest season of Dexter. Just as I was about to tap the play button, I heard a faint clatter from the kitchen. I paused for a moment, but figured it was nothing. The house wasn't new, but it was new to me, as I had just moved in a few days earlier. I dismissed the sound as nothing and started my binge. The show kept my focus as the hours passed, the noise from the kitchen a distant memory. But halfway through the season finale, the Wi-Fi cut out. I was mostly annoyed, but some part of me was thankful for the extra few minutes before I experienced another ruined finale given the franchise's track record. Dexter knows how to end people, not seasons. Despite my suspicions that I'd be better off stopping, I got up to reset the Wi-Fi when I noticed it was unplugged. I'm not one to scare easily, but a shiver shot down my spine like I'd never felt before. And that's when the noise from the kitchen hours ago came flooding back to the forefront of my mind. There was no way the Wi-Fi unplugged itself. There was nothing to fall on it, and I didn't have a pet cat, dog, or anything like that. I turned around and saw nothing but the hallway I had just so calmly walked through 100 heartbeats ago. I pulled my phone from my sweatpants and called the police. I locked the door, turned off the light, and stayed in that room back to the wall until the authorities came. The cops arrived quickly and came straight upstairs. They told me the front door was ajar. They swept the house but found no one. An hour after the cops left, I laid in bed with my thoughts, the last of which was finishing the series finale when it hit me. I had a camera system. I had forgotten because I wasn't accustomed to having one, but my dad insisted it be installed if I was going to live on my own. I opened the app and quickly scrolled back to when I got home and watched at 4 times speed. I only had 2 cameras, one inside and one at the front door. I watched as a man in gym shorts and a sweatshirt walked through my kitchen and accidentally bumped the trash can that protruded from under the countertop. To my horror, he didn't get in through the front door. I had the camera screen split to both views and only saw myself walk through the front door when I got home from work. And that's when it occurred to me. He was already in the house. I had no idea how he entered, but what scared me most is that he watched 30 minutes of Dexter from my bedroom doorway. Or at least, I like to tell myself he was watching the show. All that time, I had no idea he was behind me. I watched the footage as he watched me all those hours ago until he left my doorway and casually went into the guest bedroom where I found the Wi-Fi unplugged. I sat in silence for a moment before I called the cops back. Only one officer arrived this time, and he was not happy until I showed him footage of the man and how he didn't enter from the front door. I explained to the officer, one camera shows the front door and the other is angled to show the kitchen, part of the living room and the hallway. So I think the intruder came from either the garage or the laundry room. Clearly annoyed, he tried to reason with me. Ma'am, I know the footage went out, but he clearly left. The door was open when we came the first time, the officer said. I know, but can you please check again? I pleaded. Okay, I'll check the garage one more time, but that's it. Thank you, I said. The officer looked everywhere in the garage and laundry room, but didn't see anything out of place. Can you check the attic too? I asked. The officer sighed and pulled the rope to bring down the stairs to the attic and immediately let go, allowing the attic stair contraption to slap back onto the ceiling. "Ma'am, the light bulb is already on in the attic. When was the last time you or anyone else was up there?" I couldn't muster a word, but the fear in my face told the officer the chilling truth. I had never been in that attic. The officer unclipped his holster with one hand and motioned me to step back with the other before tapping the radio on his shoulder, requesting backup to his location. The officer slowly grabbed the rope to the attic and pulled it open. "Show me your hands. I know you're up there," the officer shouted. Terrified, I watched as two hands slowly emerged from the hole in the ceiling. The man was put into custody and charged with breaking and entering and stalking. He had no prior convictions and will be out on parole in 2 years. I don't think I'll ever sleep well again. "10 years is a long time, but it still feels like yesterday." I spent all day travelling, first bouncing between airports, then driving what felt like the most compact rental car in the country, some 100 miles up the interstate. Saying I was weary from the journey would be an understatement. By the time I finally reached the drab motel on the edge of town, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving only the flickering blue neon sign to guide me. The outside of the hotel had old bones with a modern DIY makeover. My room was basic, a faded bedspread and a TV that looked like it belonged in a museum. I didn't care though. All I really wanted was a functional phone charger, a shower and a bed to collapse into. After a much-needed shower, I nestled beneath the sheets, the cool fabric against my skin. I closed my eyes and let the soft hum of the air conditioner lull me to sleep. Just as I was about to slip into a dream, I heard it, the mechanical whir of my door unlocking. I shot upright in bed, heart racing. "Hello?" I trembled. I strained to hear, every muscle in my body tensed. A sliver of light appeared at the edge of the door, illuminating the darkened room. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Housekeeping? Sorry, my mistake. I thought the room was empty," a man's voice said from beyond the cracked door. His tone was casual and indifferent. I could hear the door close softly behind him, but my throat remained clenched with anxiety. I was alone again, but I couldn't shake the vulnerable feeling of such accessibility while I slept. I climbed out of bed and stumbled to the door. My adrenaline-riddled fingers lost all dexterity as I fumbled with the locks. My room had both a chain and a deadbolt, so I quickly locked them both. My heart began to slow, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease settle in. Climbing back into bed, I tried to convince myself it was an honest mistake, that the housekeeping staff had been misinformed. But then again, there were only a dozen or so rooms. Could the owner even afford a housekeeping staff? Were there other guests? There was only one other car in the parking lot. Question after question sprang to mind. I turned off the light and forced myself to close my eyes. If I couldn't sleep, then I'd at least rest, although sleep eventually caught up as I drifted off. Hours later, another sound pulled me from slumber, and it wasn't my alarm clock. It was a faint clamour. There was nothing threatening about it, but having a stranger nearly enter your room while you're sleeping will make just about any sound raise an eyebrow. Disoriented, I blinked into the darkness. It seemed like it came from the room next door. At least, that's what I thought. I lay still, straining to catch any nuance of sound. Was it someone arguing or another restless sleeper like myself? I listened intently, as goosebumps stood every fibre of my body to full attention. What started as a vague stir of anxiety morphed into something palpable, a creeping dread that settled in my stomach. A minute or two had passed, and my eyes were now fully adjusted to the dark. But still, I saw nothing. Just then, a small circle of light flickered across the wall opposite my bed, illuminating my headboard with a thin white beam of light before disappearing. My heart dropped like a 9-pound hammer. He's watching me. Fueled by fear, I jumped from my bed, snatched my phone and keys from the bedside table, and bolted for the door. I fumbled with the chain and deadbolt for a second before flinging the door open and sprinting down the dimly lit corridor and into the parking lot. The cold night air on my exposed skin hardly registered. I jammed the key into the ignition and peeled out of the gravel lot, rocks flying in all directions. I called the police as the once large neon sign grew smaller in my rearview mirror. I remember how shaky my voice was as I tried to tell them what happened. "Please, you have to send someone. I think someone was watching me. I think they were in my room," I stammered. The police arrived at the hotel shortly after, as I waited anxiously at the police station. It was the only place within 100 miles I felt safe. They retrieved my belongings, and an officer shared some details with me. "Ma'am, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I feel our small town owes you a debt of gratitude." He paused. "There are 12 rooms at that hotel. 12 rooms, and each one has a peephole," the officer said, his voice grave. "He's owned that hotel since his mother passed some 5 years ago. It's anyone's guess as to how many people he's spied on. Hopefully, nothing more than that, but the investigation just started." I tried to respond to the officer, but nothing came out. Just a nod. "Is there anything I can do for you?" the officer asked. "No," I said, thankful I was able to muster one word. "I figured as much," he said. As I drove away, the weight of all that happened settled on me as the sun rose. I had escaped, and thought the thin line between safety and terror would never be more evident to me until I heard what happened to the others.